Hey y'all, I gotta go.
Welcome to Contract
Thanks for your help
Wednesday.
today,
We're going to
guys.
cover Form 22K. The version is from May of 2014, and this is the utilities form. So we're going to go ahead and dive right into it, and let's take a look here. So I think before we dive into the form, we should talk about what triggered the use of this form. And it's actually specific term number 12, services of closing agent for payment of utilities is either requested, in which case you attach Form 22K, or waived, in which case you don't attach Form 22K. So good listing brokers will put this in the listing already filled out, so you can use that form, and you should use that form. If they don't, you would just attach it, and whenever you attach it, you're going to list it as an addendum below. Now, I think, yeah. So this is where the definition of the activity is spelled out. Seller shall pay all utility charges, including unbilled charges, unless waived in specific term number 12. Seller and buyer request the services of closing agent in dispersing funds necessary to satisfy unpaid utility charges in accordance with RCW 60.80. So this is actually state law. RCW stands for the Revised Code of Washington. That is the law. So the law requires the proration of utilities and how they are handled in the sale of real property. And so what we're saying when we use 22K is we want, excuse me, we want escrow to handle that, right?
You're reading Form 21 now, right?
I'm on Form 21, paragraph H, because this is what drives the use of Form 22K, all right? So does that make sense to everybody? It goes on to say, seller shall provide the names and addresses of all utilities providing service to the property and having lien rights. Attach MLS Form 22K or the equivalent. So you don't have to use that form. You just have to give them a list, right? But the list is signed by both buyer and seller when you use Form 22K. So let's go through it. Again, the purchase and sale agreement date, buyer name, seller name, and address will all pre-populate if you're using Transaction Desk. And look at what it says right here. Pursuant to RCW 60.80, buyer and seller request the closing agent to administer the disbursement of closing funds necessary to satisfy unpaid utility charges, if any, affecting the property. The names and addresses of all utilities providing services to the property and having lien rights are as follows. Boom. City of Seattle. Right? Typically, it's the city, municipality that handles water and sewer. Private parties handle garbage. PSE or Puget Power or Seattle City Light, etc. So you fill all those out. If the above information has not been filled in at the time of mutual acceptance, then 1, within 5 days, if not filled in of mutual acceptance of this agreement, seller shall provide the listing broker or selling broker with the names and addresses of all utility providers having lien rights affecting the property. And 2, buyer and seller authorize listing broker or selling broker to insert this addendum the names and addresses of the utility providers identified by seller.
We had a list of a bunch of them somewhere.
Yeah, we maintain a list. We provide it to all our buyers. But the listing broker should ask the seller, who do you pay your bills to? Let's write them down, right? Nothing in this addendum shall be construed to diminish or alter the seller's obligation to pay all utility charges, including unbilled charges. Why do you think that's in there?
What did you just read?
Nothing in this addendum shall be construed to diminish or alter the seller's obligation to pay all utility charges, including unbilled charges. That's a pretty powerful sentence.
Saying
It's in there for a reason.
just because you put this in there that you're identifying the utilities doesn't mean you stop paying your bills until closing.
Well, there's a couple things that can happen. You're on the right track, right? What if the seller lists all of them but forgets to fill in sewer? Does that mean that escrow's not going to pay it? Probably, or potentially. But the seller is still ultimately liable, and that's why that sentence is there. So no matter what you fill in, doesn't change the fact that the seller will pay all utilities, right? The other one that's super important is, I said it a couple of times, but it says utilities that have lien rights.
Because that means
Which utilities have lien rights? And what are lien rights? Do you know?
that means you can't sell the property again until they're satisfied or clouds the title, so the new buyer is then liable for those.
You're 100% right, right? They can lien the property for non-payment. That means I can't sell my house until it gets paid because I have to deliver marketable title, and this is an encumbrance that
All of this are
I don't know. I'm asking which ones are lienable.
Ah,
Water is
For
lien.
sure.
Water is lienable.
Yeah. Electricity, gas. everything should be lienable, right?
No,
No?
should be maybe, but are they? No. The only thing that's lienable is water,
Uh-huh.
and in some areas, electricity. Seattle City Light will lien, but most other utilities will not. So that last sentence is important because this is designed for lienable utilities. But really, we want to list all utilities, not just the lienable ones, because the seller, as according to this last sentence, has to pay them all, and we want escrow to make sure that they all get paid. Make sense?
If they forget to pay, then what happens?
You go back and make them pay, right? You can even, if the seller's gone, so Doris's question just for the recording was, what if they forget to pay? One of them or a couple of them, whatever. Your first step is you go back to escrow and you say, hey, have you dispersed all the funds to the seller because my client just got a bill from cable TV or whatever. Escrow, if they still have the money, will pay it. If they're out of money because they dispersed, they'll go to the seller and go, hey, we refunded you too much money. You need to send us back $200 or $80 or whatever because we didn't pay Comcast. If the seller has moved to Guatemala and is living on a mountaintop and can't be reached, escrow has to pay it. They carry an insurance policy called errors and omissions. So when they make mistakes, they have an insurance policy that would cover it. They don't want to.
Well, if it is not lienable and the listing agent did not list it here, so what can we do?
It's the exact same process. Doesn't matter if it was listed or not. You're just making it easier. That's why in our pre-closing meeting, we talk about utilities because we want to make sure all of them get identified and all of them get brought to the attention of escrow so that they all get paid properly.
So as a zoning broker, we need the listing broker to put everything, list everything
Yeah,
there.
yeah. So when you get the 22K after you get mutual, like I would be very patient and understanding until I get mutual in this market, and then once I get mutual, I go, hey, you didn't list the garbage company.
Right.
Who is it? I'm going to add that. Or you didn't list, the cable TV or whatever. Make sure it's complete and then get it to escrow.
Because some sloppy listing agents just don't do that.
Sloppy, lazy, or just didn't know and meant to go back. I mean, it's rarely is it like malicious omission, right? Where they're like, oh yeah, we're going to sneak something by somebody. Yes. Usually it's just an oversight or laziness. But it's pretty important, right? Because it's stressful for buyers, right? They're moving is stressful. Having their savings account depleted as they move because they just put in their down payment stresses them out. And then all of a sudden they get a bill that's not theirs, because it says service date from February 18th to May 18th. They're like, well, geez, we closed on May 15th. Why the hell am I going to pay 90 days worth of whatever this is? Right? And it can freak them out. So you want to have this awareness so that when you get that phone call, Ashley, and there you can just feel the stress coming through the phone, you can go, just relax. I put a clause in the agreement just in case this would happen. Doesn't happen very often, but I was smart and thought ahead, and I put a clause in there to protect you. Let me get to work on this. And all of a sudden, their stress levels just go, right? Because they're like, hell yeah, I hired the right agent. I don't even have to worry about this bill.
And the clause is that?
Yep.
The below the.
Yeah, Form 22K. Now, if you waive 22K, then you need to be much more active right before closing to avoid that happening. Because if it happens, you're going to be the one that has to deal with getting it paid, which means calling the listing broker and trying to get the listing broker to pressure the seller. And then if they don't, then your buyer's going to pay it or you are.
Why do we need to waive this 22K?
You don't, but some people do. They'll do it because they feel like it's beneficial to the seller to not have to worry about, because escrow is going to hold back $300, let's say, to make sure they paid everything,
So
and then refund the difference. And the seller might go, well, I just want my $300. I'll pay it. Don't worry. All right. Doris.
So if we waive this form, then if there's unpaid bill, then it's the buyer's responsibility.
Well, it's the seller's responsibility, but if the seller refuses, somebody's going to have to pay it or they're going to shut off the utility. So that's why it's so important. Even though it's relatively small amounts of money in most cases, it's a big deal to get your electricity shut off or your water shut off, right? Or your, God forbid, your cable TV or your internet, right?
So your water's always lienable, but electricity just depends.
Yes, Seattle City Light is the only one I know of that liens for non-payment for electricity. But that doesn't mean that they are the only ones. It's the only one I can think of.
Because anybody else would just take that person to collections and try to get it, not put a lien on the house.
Yeah. All right. So if there are no more questions about 22K, I'm going to hit stop on this bad boy.